All right, now just to introduce how we're structuring the day, how it's been done, what the context is, I'd like to invite the co-hosts and organisers of this ASPO 2012 to come up, Michael Cerveny and Guensberg, and just to quickly outline some of the issues that have shaped their thinking in shaping this conference. So in terms of, we were in Brussels last year. What were your motives in volunteering to host ASPO 2012?
I think that's your turn.
It wasn't completely voluntarily, so take care of Rembrandt. He might ask you if you want to do the next ASPO conference, and we just simply didn't say no, so this is why we are hosting it in Vienna. But it was really fun to do it. It was very interesting. And of course, we did it because we think there are not many topics in the world that are so important. Then the question, how will the energy system evolve?
Right.
Whatever happens with oil and gas is of an importance of, I don't know, many other things that are that important. This is why we did it.
Right. And in terms of the developments since the conference, I mean, one of the things that I've noticed is there's still been a tendency, certainly in the media, to focus on short-term issues. And in that context, not much attention to peak oil, although I noticed in this month's New Scientist magazine a reference to peak oil that we're actually going to stop using it before we run out of it. What, in your personal view, have been the key developments since ASPO in Brussels last year?
Well, I think there have been, I was prepared for this question, so I think there were 4 topics that everyone is probably aware of, and a couple of topics that are below the ground. So one thing is, of course, the Arab Spring, with tremendous implications for the oil system, probably lower investments than expected, higher subsidies within this country, driving the oil demand even more in these countries. The next thing, of course, was Fukushima. At least in the German-speaking countries, everything concerning nuclear power is always top, but it has a huge implication on additional oil and gas demand in Japan and in Germany, because both countries have closed down a lot of reactors in the short term. In the long term, it might mean that those countries really go towards renewables. The third thing that's changed since last year is shale gas is popping up everywhere, even in Austria, north of Vienna. This is a debate that will probably be a debate in most European countries in the next time, certainly in Austria next year. And the fourth topic is that the oil price has been above $100 for more than a year, something that no one would have expected a couple of years ago. And just as Jeff Rubin said last year, we are in a recession because the oil price is above $100 per barrel. But we should not forget the things that are not in the media. A year has passed, and every year that is passing means 3 to 5 million barrels of natural decline every year, which the oil production sector has to make up with new fields. That's the challenging task, that the mega trend is going towards decline. So this is the supply side, and on the demand side, we must never forget on what's happening in China. They had another year with almost 10% growth, and 10% growth in China means 1 or 2 million more barrels needed by just one country, and that's another challenge on the demand side.
Great. And of course, we've integrated most of those issues into the program. Could you just perhaps take us through what your personal objectives are so that people are clear on what your hopes and expectations for this meeting are and how we've structured the session?
Well, thank you. As we've seen before, the energy system is a very complex system. So one of our objectives is to learn something, to get a better understanding of what's going on. So if you get out of this conference on Friday and say that there has been something new to you, one of our objectives has been reached. We have very different perspectives on the energy issue, and very different perspectives on in our conference, on our panels, and very different opinions. And that's important to us. It's not a self-referential approach to say, okay, we've always said this and that, and now we confirmed. It's having very different perspectives, and you'll see in the panel discussions that there will be some conflicting positions too, but we think that's good. So it's sometimes not so easy to have a key message. We will have some of them after the conference. One of our objectives too is to bridge science. The ASPO community always has been a science-oriented network with decision-making on different levels. On the one hand, the business sector, but the political sector too. I think this bridging is very important with all of these raising awareness events. So we have both sides here, but it's very much based on facts and on this scientific background. And one objective is, of course, to bring together people. So we are very happy that there are a lot of international guests here among the speakers and participants, and to have the experts from Austria and stakeholders from Austria too. So this shall be an opportunity to get together, to network, be it in the evening reception or right now and in the breaks. So yeah, and one objective is reached, having such a variety of people here. Yeah, we're very happy about it, so thanks for coming.
Great, thanks very much. Well, let me just share with you a couple of perspectives I've had since the last meeting, because this is my honour of being second time in a row the moderator. Can I have a slide, please? When I reflect on sorry, can I have the slide before that? Yeah, you talked about diversity, and it seems to me that as I've read the press since our last meeting and when I was listening to you all speak at the last meeting, we've got at least 7 different tribes, if you like, that one can put in a taxonomy. We've got a clear peak oil group who view the position that the global oil production has or will peak shortly and then decline. We've got a plateau oil group that's out there saying that it's going to be a long and lovely sunlit upland, possibly with some spikes. We've got a sort of peak myth community who poo-poo the whole idea of peak oil and say that there's, with unconventional, limitless hydrocarbons. We've got an altogether other group, peak demand, that basically says, as the New Scientist does this month, that it doesn't really matter how much is there because we're going to stop using or slow down our use of it. We've got a peak price issue. Jeff Rubin was part of that issue that sort of says that price is the determinant here, not only in extracting and exploiting more resources, but actually usage rates. We've got the peak emissions group that basically says it doesn't matter how much we've got, we can't afford to burn what we know is there. And we've got the peak insecurity folk, at least, who argue that one needs to, given the insecurity, and we'll take up this issue in our global geopolitical side of things, that we need to localize production of energy as much as possible. Now, in thinking through our sessions today and tomorrow, slide please, I'm going to suggest that we keep in mind that there are a number of gaps. The gaps I heard at last year's meeting was very much a gap that there's an information gap. We don't have key information that we need as scientists and economists. So we'll be looking for what those gaps are, and hopefully, since this is the 10th anniversary of ASPO, and looking back not only at the last 10 years' achievements, but looking forward on what ASPO should be doing for the next decade, to perhaps come up with some recommendations of how we might fill a gap like information. Similarly, the awareness gap. Very clear awareness gap that information is known but not widely disseminated and understood by policymakers, investors and so forth. There's a discussion gap that was mentioned at our last meeting, that there actually aren't the stakeholder dialogues between key players. There's the communication gap. Media does not always present a level playing field on this. And of course a policy gap, and we'll hear from some politicians shortly on that. So let's think in terms of gaps that we're hearing in the next 2.5 days, and let's try and think of how we might respond to those gaps as ASPO moves forward into 2013 and the next decade. So please join me in thanking Georg and Michael. Oh, one more point? I'll mention on the record.
Just one sentence. We really want to thank, first of all, Rembrandt, Coppelar, the organizer of last year's meeting, also helped us to organize this year's meeting, because we wouldn't have had all the context that are necessary to all the speakers and to the ASPO community. So thank you, Rembrandt. And of course, thank you to our sponsors. About 3/4 of the budget was raised by them. We have 8 sponsors. Thanks to all of them. And without you, it would not have been possible.
Great. Thanks, Mark.